welcome back to NCSY Pulse. We are powered by NCSY Alumni. I am John Ackerman, and I am really excited for today's show, joined by a very good friend of mine, an old friend of mine, as we sort of discovered today. Not that she is old, but our friendship is old.
I love being old.
Jackie Simon, welcome to NCSY Pulse. It is awesome to have you here.
Thank you so much for having me. I'm happy to be here.
It is absolutely my pleasure. I was, I guess for the audience out there, Jackie and I, now we sort of know, we've known each other for about 15 years. And Jackie's a former, I think, regional board member, although I could be mistaken about that.
I mean, does juniors count? Because that was my last affiliation with regional board.
That's like a really good NCSY like poll question. Does juniors count? Definitely, though, a superstar advisor and somebody who's a big part of our team. So, Jackie, we're excited to have you here with us today. Tell us a little bit, you just mentioned juniors. How did you get into the NCSY world? Because I know once you got in, you absolutely made your presence felt. But what's your superhero origin story?
Okay, I'm going to throw back to, do you remember Jillian's? There was an arcade called Jillian's.
Yes.
Yeah, it's like the old Dave & Buster's. It like rebranded as Dave & Buster's, but it used to be called Jillian's.
It was at the mall. That was at the Source Mall, right?
Yeah.
Yes.
There was one also by Roosevelt Field Mall, I think. But I don't remember which location it was, but I definitely remember it was called Jillian's. And that was for sure my first NCSY event in 6th grade.
Oh my
and that
God.
was like, that was like everybody went to that. Like we were all going to Jillian's. All my friends went to Jillian's. And I remember at that event, I met someone named Ben Stern.
I remember Ben Stern.
Yeah. And Ben Stern introduced himself, and he was I think he was assistant director at the time. I could be wrong there. He was eventually the director by the time I was in 8th grade. But I really had the best time. I was with all my friends. I met new people, and I started going to like more and more events, and every time I would see Ben there, and then I'd meet more like advisors and people. And then Ben, throughout my entire like 7th grade, was like, you have to apply for regional board. You have to apply for regional board. I'm like, what's regional board? Like I didn't know anything.
Regional board?
But he convinced me. And then in 8th grade, that's what I did.
Fantastic. I love it.
It all
And you
started at
continued on through
Jillian's.
high school, right?
Yeah, I continued on through high school, and I went on. Do they still have fall, winter, and spring regional?
I think some of the regions still have them. Not so much in the New York, New Jersey area, but it's more of like an out-of-town thing at this point.
Oh, okay. I loved those, like petition to bring back the regionals for me. But those were like Shabbatons, and I would go on all the regionals. I tried to coax all my friends to come with me because I loved it. I stayed throughout till 12th grade. I remember even going on they had a ski trip, and I don't ski. I've never skied. I skied one time in my life, and I went right into the orange fence, never again. I'm not like a risk taker that way, but I just wanted to go because it was like a cool NCSY event. I literally stayed in the ski chalet, whatever that place is called, the whole time, just drinking hot cocoa and talking to my friends while everyone else skied. I can't believe I convinced my parents to pay for that and I didn't ski. But literally anything they did, I was always showing up.
I feel like that's the classic, like you said, going to Jillian's was the classic junior NCSY event. The ski Shabbaton was the classic high school NCSY winter regional.
Yes.
And I remember I went on multiple ski Shabbatons, and I used to ski. I grew up in Minnesota. It was a thing that we did, and I loved it. But I remember thinking there were so many injuries. Why are there so many injuries? Oh, right. Take 200 teenagers who have never skied before. And we're saying skiing is the equivalent of go to an arcade. Okay, everybody, you've never done this. Go on the mountain on Sunday morning after you haven't slept for 2 days, and good luck. And hopefully no one dies.
It's not a foolproof plan. I did enjoy the snow tubing. I did do that sometimes. If they had snow tubing, that's less injury prone and more fun, in my opinion.
Yeah. Does not require the balance or life insurance that skiing can.
Exactly. You had to probably fill out a lot of forms to do something like that.
I don't know. Probably we did, but I don't remember if back then that was even something we were doing. So glad that everybody survived.
Yeah, seriously.
Jackie, now that we are 15 years later, and you have created a very successful and really, really cool and interesting podcast called Such a Good Call. Tell us, where did this come from? What was your inspiration? And what are you guys doing with this podcast?
Okay, so it's with me and my best friend, Bracha Kahana. Shout out, Bracha. Bracha and I have spoken on the phone every day for I don't know how many years. Many, many years. Okay. We became friends in seminary, and from then on, we've just been best friends. And she's been telling me for years, our phone calls are so good. I feel so good after them. I wish we had a podcast. And I'm like, yeah, okay. Everybody says we should have a podcast. And I totally ignored her for so long. She's way more bubbly and dynamic. And I'm just yeah, sure, whatever, it's fine. And then recently, we started in March. Our first episode was Purim, actually. And at that point, she's like, Jackie, I'm not taking this from you anymore. We're doing it. We're actually doing it. I'm like, okay, but I want to have a rationale of why we're doing it, not just to hear our own voices. There are enough voices out there, So with October 7th and everything going on in the Jewish community, it feels very heavy. And there's so many podcasts Jewish-based podcasts that are so heavy, and it's so important because we need to know what's going on in Israel and these important stories and inspiration, and I think that's amazing. But I really did feel that there was a open space for a lighthearted Jewish podcast we're doing obviously specifically for women, but a place where women can just be free of all of that heaviness and just fun and just a conversation with your best friend. That's why we named it Such a Good Call, because it feels like such a good call. And also we try to make good calls on the podcast, but
excellent.
So it has double meaning, but it's really, Baruch Hashem, grown so much. And I feel that there's now a community for women to just chat and have fun and not think about all the responsibilities that are placed on us and sometimes can be challenging. But while you're at the supermarket or while you're cooking for Shabbos or literally anything, wherever you're doing, you could just plug in and listen to a very refreshing, relatable two friends chatting.
I love it. I think the idea is awesome. You're exactly right that there's so much good Jewish content out there, really good Jewish content. I mean, the level of Torah and the level of Jewish education that's available in the podcast world is unheard of. And I don't want to say but like you said, it does get very heavy and it is very serious. Yeah. And sometimes you need to decompress a little bit and you need to relax a little bit. And it's not always the easiest thing to find a good, clean show you can listen to or watch or engage with. And that you guys have found that niche and created something like that, I think is not only really cool, but I think it's really necessary. I think people need things like that.
Yeah. Even when we were starting it, I was I don't know if this is needed. I feel like it's needed, but I don't know if everyone else is going to feel that way. So I guess we'll see what happens. Baruch Hashem, the response is, oh my God, we need relief, we really needed this. We really needed this reprieve from all the heaviness.
Right. I've even heard that you guys have been invited to speak. Is that true, that you had people approach you to speak at schools or something like that? That's the rumor on the street.
Yes, we have been approached to speak.
We haven't accepted
we haven't accepted the request yet.
I think it's great. I have 4 daughters. And for me, there's always a balance of trying to coach them and encourage them and educate them and not be, as they sometimes call me, the worst dad of all time. But I find it hard sometimes to say this is something you could do. This is something you could listen to. And I think that they obviously see what I do and they see some of the podcast stuff that I do. And to be able to say, hey, look, though I know you guys are super embarrassed by what I'm doing, you should listen to what Jackie and Bracha are doing because it's your life. It's relevant to you. And I think for them to see you guys as in many ways as celebrities and as role models, no pressure. I think it's a beautiful thing. I think it's an important thing. And there's not enough people like you guys in the community. So from my perspective, obviously the podcast is not geared towards me specifically, but I think it's a really amazing creation that you guys have brought together here.
Thank you. I also think for us, it's like a fine line between like podcasting and influencing. And like, we really don't want to overlap those two things. We want to stay in our lane. So I agree. I totally agree with you. And I think it's hard for us to like comprehend our influence at this point. So we have to build ourselves up and realize we should be speaking at these engagements we're invited to and saying yes. Also, by the way, like we both work full time and we're both moms. So like, scheduling is not easy.
Yes, that is
but
true.
But we do our best. We will continue to do our best.
No, for sure. I think there's also an element of, we look at role models sometimes as people who are really tough to get to that level. And I think sometimes that's a mistake. Mm-hmm. But to have attainable role models who are easily relatable to is really important. Mm-hmm. I remember, I'm going to embarrass you a little bit because I'm not sure if you know this story. But years ago, we were staffing a TJJ bus, and we had our crew pretty well set. It was Aaron Horn and Aria Smith and Hartley Perlmutter and Stacy Rosenberg and Jill Kogel. And they were looking for one more boy. And I believe, if I'm right, you can correct me if I'm wrong, you were trying to get on like one of the other NCSY programs.
Was it Jolt?
Maybe it was Jolt.
I don't remember.
It was Jolt.
Yes, I think it
might have been Jolt. But you were on one of the... So maybe it was Jolt. And I remember thinking, okay, Jackie's going to go on Jolt. And I got Stacy and Jill going on TJJ. And, you know, these different advisors on different programs. So we're set. And then I think I remember hearing from you that Jolt didn't work out. And I called the TJJ team. I called Aaron Horn and I called David Cutler and I said, okay, I got your guy. And they're like, oh, great. Who is he? I'm like, right. He's great. He's awesome. There's only one thing. And they're like, what? I'm like, right. It's a she. And they're like, John, we told you specifically to take a boy. We needed to balance it out. And I said, okay, I know, but hear me out. I have this awesome advisor and I think she'll bring a great vibe to the bus. And lo and behold, you did. You joined the team. And that really, first of all, that was the first summer that New York NCSY ever filled a full TJJ bus. Really? It was. And I still remember to this day. And I remember, you know, we were talking beforehand about some of the kids on the bus. And that bus impacted the region. And I think that one of the major pieces was that you and Jill and Stacy and Hartley, who eventually got married, you guys were great role models, but so easily relatable, so connectable. And I think that in many ways, your show is that evolution, is this idea of you can be a role model and be relatable, somebody that a girl like my girls could look at and say, hey, I want to be like them. That's somebody I could attain that. I could be like them. And so I think this is a kind of a cool bridge from that TJJ summer to what you're doing now.
I need to backtrack because it's hysterical. I forgot that story, and it's hysterical that I was like under the guise of a man is how I got where I needed to be because I think I told this story on my podcast. When the first time I went to sleepaway camp, my name is Jackie, like legally Jackie, not Jacqueline, like always Jackie. And they put me on the boys bus to camp.
No.
Yeah. Because they thought Jackie was a boy. Because like I went to the girls' bus and they're like, you're not on here. And I'm like, but I have to get to camp. Like, what am I going to do? And then my mom checked and I was on the boys bus. So this has like haunted me my whole life, is that people thinking I'm a boy. But you know what? It ends up where I need to be. So if that's the way and I also used to get upset with my parents. Why didn't you name me Jacqueline? Whatever, the whole thing. But that's hysterical. And second of all, I want to say that I'm grateful to you for putting me in that position, because to this day, TJJ was the best summer of my life as a staff member. I didn't get to go as a kid, but like as a staff member, for sure the best summer of my life. I wish I could relive those times. It was the most impactful. It was the most fun. Everything you could wish out of a summer, that was TJJ.
Love it. I love it. That's what I hear. I also never got to go on TJJ. Well, I never got to go as a kid or as a staff, but that's what I hear from everybody, that TJJ is the best summer ever. Are you still in touch with any? There's
nothing like it. Yeah, am I still in touch with anyone? I just saw Nikki Fierst the other day.
Yes.
Yeah, and I gave her the biggest hug. I was like, Nikki. But we were a family. Like anyone I see from that bus, or if we ever like come back in touch. Obviously, I'm still in touch with Jill and Stacy and Hartley, because Hartley and Stacy are married. That was totally a life-changing summer for me, and I saw things so differently, and it was so incredible to watch these kids grow a love for Israel, which like most of them have never been before, and a love for Judaism, and then davening, and the boys putting on tefillin in the morning. This was all so new for them, and they were so excited about it, and it was just so beautiful to watch the whole experience. And even afterwards, when we kept up afterwards, I think a few of them have served in the IDF. A bunch of them have served in the IDF, and that was their first summer in Israel for some of them. So it's just really special to watch that.
It was a really it was a unique group. I don't know if you remember, we did the training for TJJ at the JCC in Roslyn that spring. That might be like really far back. I don't know if you remember this, but we met the parents, and that really opened a lot of doors for us. Great Neck NCSY actually really took off. The roots of what Great Neck NCSY is now, which is like they have 3 full-time staff members. There are now, I believe, each summer 2 or 3 Great Neck NCSY TJJ buses, if you can imagine. And the roots really go back to that summer where we met all these parents. And I still hear once in a while from Sabrina Sandler, and from a bunch of the other kids. But it was really a cool group that I think in a lot of ways shaped the future of New York NCSY for years to come. So that was an amazing bus. You guys did a good job. And I will a little bit pat myself on the back for putting that team together.
That was a great team. Even just the staff members, like we were up laughing all night long. Like it was so fun. We had the best time. And I think that really shone through to the kids, because they knew we were having the best time, and then they were having the best time. It was like a very, very special, unique summer. So credit to you. And also, if any of the Bus 3 people hear this, please, like, hi, I miss you.
Yeah, this would be a great time for reunion here in West Hempstead. I mean, you're here, I'm here, yes. Jill's here. Not that I'm part of the bus, but I could be the kid on the outside wishing he was there. Yes. And I'm constantly trying to convince Stacy and Hartley to move to West Hempstead. So who knows? One day we could have the whole crew here.
It's not off. Like it could be. You never know.
Yeah, for sure. Jackie, now that you're here and we're looking back on, I mean, if we're talking, it was 15 years ago that you and I had a conversation about being an advisor. So your NCSY career goes back now, about 20 years, which is
That's
kind of a crazy thing to say. If you could go back to seeing Jackie the first day, that first Jillian's experience, and you could go back and tell yourself something at the very beginning, some advice about, the NCSY experience, what would you tell yourself?
What would I tell myself if I could go back? I would tell myself, like, not advice, right? Like, more advice, just what to expect.
Could be anything.
I could tell you that looking back, how I feel is that it really gave me a sense of identity and leadership skills that I don't think I would have been able to get otherwise. That was like a separate thing that I did, maybe different than my friends. Sometimes I'd go to things with just by myself, because I had my people there that I would go with. And also, like, for people like Ben Stern to point me out and say, you should be on regional board. And I was like, me, little Jackie, why, But then that he saw something that he had me on the phone. They had that office on Central Avenue. Yeah. I was on those phones all night long calling people for Shabbatons and like whatever. He knew that there was something in me that I can help. And I don't think I would have seen that in myself without NCSY. And I think that's really driven me throughout my life, that I can do more than I think I can,
That's a great lesson. It's funny you mentioned, I also remember the days of being there, being in the office and being up late, like calling people. And it's just funny because who calls people now, Yeah. And I heard somebody recently was saying, I don't love voice notes. I use voice notes, but I'm not excited about voice notes. Like when I get a voice note, I'm like, God, you know.
Well, they have
And-
to be less than 2 minutes or less
Oh
than
my
1
God,
minute.
no, yeah, no. I almost want to just like delete it. If I see like a 2 or 3 minute voice note, I'm like, why?
I know.
Like, why?
I
But
know.
what
Just call
what
me.
drives me? It's crazy. Somebody said to me recently, they're like, they need an app, right, where you could just collect all the voice notes together and build a conversation. And I'm like, you mean a phone call?
It's true.
And they're like, right, right.
That's what,
Yes,
that's what
that-
we used to do.
Yeah, it's crazy. It's crazy, but good. Listen, I mean,
Yeah.
you did a lot of good work then. You're doing a lot of good work now, and you've done a tremendous amount. And it's exciting from the outside to watch what you guys are building, to continue to grow and to develop. And we're excited to see where it leads.
Thank you. I appreciate that. And thank you for being part of that journey. I don't know what I would have been without TJJ and that experience of that summer. And also you asking me to be an advisor. That really was like a huge part of my life also.
Yeah, it's so funny because right before we got on, I'm just looking here on my phone. I'm looking back, and I don't know why our conversation started in Facebook Messenger, but I'm looking at the date July 19th, 2010. And I'm like, oh my God, that is... Wow, that's where it started. I'm so happy that we're still friends today, and we're neighbors. I live around the corner from your family, which is a lot of fun.
Yes.
And I really appreciate that you took the time. I know it's late, but hopefully you were able to get bedtime done before we did
Yes.
podcast
Yes.
recording.
Worked out perfectly.
I had to like explain to my kids, like, you need to go to sleep. And they're like, why? I'm like, because Abba is recording a podcast. And they're like, why? Just like, no, just go to sleep.
Do your kids also ask you, like, are you going to talk about me? Like my kids
my
think
God.
the podcast is about them. They're like,
So-
so can you talk about me this time? I'm like, that's not what I'm doing.
My older girls are mortified because I do mention them. And the best part is that some of their friends listen to some of my podcasts. And
my God.
that's the best because I'll sneak in little references about them.
That's hysterical.
I feel like now after going and being an NCSY for so long, having teenagers is a really interesting adventure now.
Wow.
Yeah.
You'll have to tell me how that is. I'm not there yet.
Yeah, we'll prep you. Anyway, Jackie, thank you so much for taking time and joining us tonight. It was really a blast having you on the show.
My pleasure. Thank you.
This has been NCSY Pulse, brought to you by NCSY Alumni. Please follow us on Instagram at NCSY Pulse. You can catch our shows on YouTube and on Spotify and wherever you get your podcasts. Thank you very much, and we'll catch you later.